everybody. I'm going to talk to you today about some imaginary number stuff. So, we have already discussed what happens when we add and subtract complex numbers. But we're going to talk about multiplying today. And in order to start that conversation off, we're going to start talking about what I is and what I squared is. So I, we talked about, is used when you have the square root of a number that's negative. And then I squared is the next step. So if we have the square root of a -1 and we square it, that's really what we're saying we're doing when we square I, is we're squaring the square root of a -1. These are inverse operations, so they cancel each other out. That leaves us with just a -1. So that's why I squared is equal to a -1. Keep that in mind because we're going to use that fact as we work through these. Okay, so here we go. Let's multiply 3i and 4i. So when we do any kind of multiplication, it's the same kind of thing. We're just trying to multiply coefficients, multiply variables. So 3 times 4, that's 12 all day. And then I times I, just like x times x is x squared, I times I is I squared. So this is not 3i plus 4i. In that case, we just leave it as 7i. We don't have to change our exponent on the I because we're just adding, like combining like terms. But when you start multiplying, that does change. Okay, so 12i squared is like 12 times I squared. What we want to do is every time we see an I squared, we want to replace it with what it's equal to and then simplify. So 12i squared would be the same as 12 times -1. That is the same as -12. So that is your answer on that one. That's going to be just a piece of a problem when we get to this other stuff. But for now, that's all we're going to do. Okay, same thing over here. I times 2 minus 3i. So let's do I times 2 first. It's not going to do anything except put those two things together. We can't combine them and make anything crazy, so we're just going to leave it as 2i. And then I times a -3i. Remember, that's like a 1 out there. So 1 times -3 is -3. And I times I is I squared. We always want to look and make sure we can't clean anything up, and we can. Anytime you see an I squared, you need to be looking for that and know how to fix it. So I actually want to look at this whole entire term here. I want to look at -3 I squared because I need to view it in that way to make it make a little sense. I squared is equal to -1. So we replace that with that. And what happens when you multiply two negatives? You get a positive, right? So this entire part of the problem right here, -3i squared, is really the same as a +3. When we write our answer, we normally will write the real number first and the imaginary number second. So we'll do that. So there's your answer for that one. Okay. Pause if you want to write anything down, take notes, ask questions, do that. Okay. So the last one would be really the big kahuna, like the mama problem. What is it that I really want you to be able to do with this stuff? Well, I want you to be able to multiply an entire complex number by another entire complex number. To do this, let's think back to Algebra 1. Do you ever remember learning FOIL? And you usually would use this when you may be doing a problem that looks sort of like this. So you've got a binomial times a binomial. And you would talk about, hey, I multiply this by this and this by this with this little process. It looks like rainbows is another thing I've heard people call it. But anyway, what we would do is basically take this first number, multiply it by the first number over here. So 3 times 5, that's 15.